The cameras had already been rolling for 20 minutes, but no one in the room could have guessed how quickly the air was about to change. The press conference had been meant to promote a film they had all worked on together. Keanu Reeves, Ana de Armas, and Sandra Bullock sitting side by side on the low stage, the crowd of reporters pressing forward like a tide. It was supposed to be light, fun, filled with harmless questions about filming and behind-the-scenes moments. But then, from the far left corner, a voice cut through the chatter. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp, like it had been waiting for the right moment to strike. The reporter leaned into the microphone and asked Ana a question that didn't feel like it belonged here at all. It wasn't about the movie. It wasn't even about acting. It was about her worth, about whether she thought she even deserved to be sitting between two stars like Keanu and Sandra. The room went still. Even the air conditioning seemed to hum softer, like it was leaning in to hear her answer. Ana's eyes flickered for a moment, a small shift that only someone looking closely could see. She opened her mouth slightly, then stopped, the weight of the question pressing against her chest. She had been asked tough things before, but this wasn't curiosity. It was judgment wrapped in a smile. Keanu sat still beside her, his body quiet, his hands resting loosely in his lap. He didn't interrupt, didn't jump in right away. His eyes stayed on her, steady, almost as if he was giving her space to choose whether to speak or stay silent. But on the other side, Sandra Bullock leaned forward just slightly. And then, before Ana could answer, Sandra's voice filled the space. Her tone was calm but carried something firm underneath it, something that made people stop shifting in their seats. She didn't look at the reporter. She looked straight ahead, like she was talking to everyone in the room at once. "You know," Sandra said, "sometimes the most talented person in the room is also the one who's had to prove herself the most. Ana doesn't have to tell you why she's here. She's here because she's earned it. And if you've seen her work, you'd know that without asking." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ana's fingers curled slightly against the fabric of her dress. She looked at Sandra with something between surprise and gratitude, the kind you don't often get to show in public without feeling vulnerable. The reporter tried to speak again, but Sandra's eyes, calm but unflinching, held them in place. And Keanu? He still hadn't spoken a word, but there was something in his stillness, something in the way his gaze stayed fixed on Ana, that made it feel like he had been part of the answer without opening his mouth. Ana took a slow breath, and when she finally spoke, her voice was soft but clear. "I'm grateful to be here," she said, "and I'm grateful for the people beside me." She glanced between Sandra and Keanu, but what she didn't say, what stayed behind her eyes, was that she had almost let that question take something from her, and it hadn't, because someone stepped in before it could. That moment would follow all three of them long after the press conference ended, though none of them knew yet just how far it would ripple. And somewhere in the quiet of that pause, Keanu's lips curved into the faintest smile, not for the cameras, but for her. The press conference ended with a wave of polite applause, but it was the kind of applause that came more from routine than from genuine excitement. Flashes from cameras still lit the stage in bursts, and the three of them smiled for a few final shots before being led backstage by the event staff. Ana walked slightly behind Sandra and Keanu, her mind still replaying the question. It had been just one sentence from that reporter, but it was heavy, like a stone she couldn't quite shake out of her pocket. She wasn't new to criticism. She had dealt with it before, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a polite smile that didn't match how she felt inside. But something about this one was different. Maybe because it happened in front of them. Maybe because it happened in front of him. As they reached the quieter hallway behind the stage, Sandra slowed her pace until she was beside Ana. Her voice dropped low so only Ana could hear. "Don't let that get into your head," she said. "People who ask questions like that aren't looking for an answer. They're looking for a reaction." Ana gave a small nod, though her chest still felt tight. I know. I just... I wasn't ready for it. From a few steps ahead, Keanu turned slightly, his pace slowing until the three of them were walking together. His voice was calm, almost casual, but there was a quiet weight to it. You don't have to be ready for every hit, he said. You just have to remember who you are when it lands. Anna looked at him, and for a moment, she didn't have words. There was something grounding about the way he spoke, not to erase the sting, but to remind her it didn't define her. The hallway ended at a side door that led to a private lounge. Inside, the noise of the press conference faded, replaced by the softer hum of quiet conversations, the rustle of staff moving around, the faint clink of glassware. They sat together on a small couch in the corner, away from the others. Sandra leaned back, stretching her arms along the top of the couch. You know, I've been in this business long enough to know something important, she said, looking between the two of them. It's never really about whether you belong. It's about whether you keep showing up even when someone tries to convince you that you don't. Anna smiled faintly, though her eyes were still distant. You make it sound easy. Sandra gave a half smile. It's not. But you learn. Keanu stayed quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the floor. Then he looked up at Anna. When people see you as less than you are, it says more about their limits than yours. The words landed in the air between them, not heavy this time, but steady. Anna let them sit there, absorbing them slowly. In that quiet corner, something unspoken passed between the three of them, a silent agreement that whatever came next, they were in it together. What none of them knew yet was that the question from the press conference would not be the last challenge they'd face together. There was more coming, and it would test that quiet agreement in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The next morning, Anna woke to the soft light coming through the hotel curtains. For a few seconds, she felt the calm of not remembering the previous day. Then the memory of the press conference slid back in, along with the faces, the flashes, and that single sharp question. She made coffee, stood by the window, and looked down at the quiet street below. People moved in every direction, none of them knowing or caring what had been said to her yesterday. It struck her how strange it was, that something so small to others could take up so much space inside her. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Sandra. Breakfast downstairs in 30 minutes. You're coming. Anna smiled faintly. Sandra didn't leave much room for negotiation. When she got to the hotel cafe, Sandra was already there at a corner table, a cup of tea in her hands. Keanu sat beside her, his posture relaxed, a newspaper folded on the table in front of him. Morning, Anna said quietly, as she slid into the seat across from them. Keanu looked up and gave a small nod, his eyes steady. Sandra smiled warmly. Morning, beautiful. You look better today. Anna shrugged. Trying. They ordered food, but before the plates arrived, Sandra leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. I've been thinking about yesterday, she said. And I know you want to move past it, but I also think maybe there's something to take from it. Anna raised an eyebrow. Like what? How to dodge questions better? Sandra shook her head. No. How to turn them into something else. Into your own moment. Keanu, who had been silent, set his coffee cup down. People will always try to define you, he said. You can't stop that, but you can make sure you're the one who decides what sticks. Anna felt their words settling in her chest. There was no pressure in their tone. No expectation, just the kind of truth that comes from people who have lived through it. When the food came, they let the conversation drift to other things. Keanu told a quiet story about a small cafe he'd found years ago in Paris, where the owner remembered his order even after a decade. Sandra made them laugh with an impression of a director they had all worked with. The heaviness from yesterday began to loosen, but just as they were finishing, Sandra's phone lit up on the table. She glanced at it, her expression tightening slightly. She turned the screen so they could see a headline on an entertainment site. It was about yesterday's press conference. The question. And it was already spreading online. Anna stared at the screen. Her chest tightened again. So it's not over. Keanu's voice was calm. Maybe not. But that means you get another chance to decide what comes next. And with those words, the day began to shift in a way none of them expected, toward something bigger, and toward a moment that would test everything they'd just promised each other. By afternoon, the headline had been shared thousands of times. Anna's name was trending on social media, but not because of her work or the film. Clips from the press conference were circulating. One short video of the reporter's question, followed by Sandra's answer, was everywhere. The comments were mixed. Some praised Sandra for stepping in. Others questioned why Anna hadn't spoken for herself. Anna scrolled through them for a while, each word feeling heavier than it should. She knew better than to read them, but curiosity is its own trap. Her phone buzzed again, this time a call from her publicist. "It's all over the place," the voice on the other end said. "We need to respond. Do you want to do an interview? Maybe a post?" Anna hesitated. She could feel the pressure building, the pull to explain herself, to defend herself. But she wasn't sure what to say, or if saying anything at all was the right choice. She ended the call with a promise to think about it, then sat back on the bed. Her mind kept drifting back to Keanu's words that morning. You get to decide what sticks. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. When she opened it, Sandra was standing there with 2 paper cups of coffee and a bag of pastries. "Thought you could use a rescue mission," she said. Anna let her in, and a moment later, Keanu appeared too, holding a folded piece of paper. He handed it to Anna. It was a printed email from the film's director. The last line read, "The only thing that matters is the work. Don't let noise drown your voice." Keanu spoke softly. He sent it to all of us. I thought you should see it now. Anna held the paper for a long time. I don't want to be the story. Not like this. Sandra sat on the couch, unwrapping a pastry. Then make the story yours. We can help. They spent the next hour talking, not about damage control, but about how to shift the conversation towards something real. Sandra suggested they find a way to speak together, so it wouldn't feel like Anna was standing alone. Keanu listened more than he spoke, but when he did, his words were measured. When the noise is loud, he said, you don't always need to shout over it. Sometimes you just need to speak in a way that makes people lean in. Anna looked between them. So what do we do? Sandra smiled faintly. We give them a moment they won't expect. They didn't have the full plan yet, but they had something better, the start of one. And as evening settled over the city, Anna felt a shift inside her. The fear hadn't disappeared, but it wasn't sitting in the driver's seat anymore. What none of them knew was that the chance to take control of the story would come sooner than they thought, on a stage even bigger than the one where the question was first asked. 2 days later, they were scheduled to appear at a major evening event for the film, a televised panel followed by a live audience Q&A. It wasn't like the press conference. This one was more personal, more visible, with cameras capturing every detail and broadcasting it to millions. In the car on the way there, the three of them sat in a quiet kind of focus. Anna kept looking out the window, watching the lights of the city slide by. Sandra scrolled through her phone, her brow furrowed, and Keanu sat between them, hands resting on his knees, gaze steady ahead. You know, Sandra said at last, we don't have to force anything. If the right moment comes, you'll know. Anna nodded but didn't answer. Her stomach felt like it was carrying both anticipation and dread. When they arrived, The air outside was electric. Fans pressed behind barricades, calling out their names, flashes of light chasing their steps. Inside, the venue was warm and crowded, the stage set with 3 chairs angled toward the audience. The first half of the event went smoothly. They talked about the film, about working together, about favorite scenes. The audience laughed at Sandra's jokes and leaned in when Keanu shared thoughtful moments from filming. Anna answered questions about her character, and for a while it almost felt normal again. Then came the Q&A segment. A young woman from the audience was handed a microphone. She looked nervous but determined as she stood. "This question is for Anna," she began. "A lot of people have been talking about the press conference, and I just wanted to ask how you deal with moments like that. How do you handle it when someone questions if you belong?" The room went still again, just like before. Anna felt every pair of eyes on her, but this time the weight was different. She glanced at Sandra, who gave her a small, steady nod. Keanu's eyes stayed on her, not pushing, not pulling, just holding her in place. Anna took the microphone. She spoke slowly, her voice low but clear. "The truth is, it's not easy. Sometimes words get under your skin and they make you doubt yourself. But I've learned that you don't have to face it alone. I have people beside me who remind me that I belong even when I forget. And maybe that's the most important thing, finding people who stand with you and learning to stand with yourself." The audience was quiet for a beat, and then the applause came, not polite, but warm and strong. Sandra reached over and touched Anna's hand. "Perfect," she whispered. Keanu leaned slightly toward the microphone in front of him. "And for the record," he said, his tone soft but unmistakable, "we've always known she belongs." The applause grew louder. What Anna didn't know in that moment was that her answer would be clipped, shared, and replayed far more than the original question ever had. And the ripples from that night would go further than any of them expected. The next morning, Anna woke to the sound of her phone vibrating over and over on the nightstand. Sunlight poured through the curtains, warm and soft, but the notifications on her screen were anything but quiet. Her name was trending again, only this time, it wasn't about the question at the press conference. It was about the answer she'd given on stage the night before. Clips of her speaking, of her voice steady and clear, of Sandra's hand resting on hers, of Keanu's calm words, were everywhere. Strangers online were calling it one of the most honest moments they had seen from a celebrity interview. Others were sharing their own stories of times they'd felt they didn't belong, using her words as a reminder to keep going. She sat up slowly, letting it sink in. The heaviness from days ago felt lighter now, replaced by something warmer, steadier. Her phone buzzed again, this time a call from Sandra. "Rise and shine, superstar," Sandra said with a smile in her voice. "How's it feel to be the face of resilience today?" Anna laughed softly. "Overwhelming, but in a good way." "Good, because you didn't just answer for yourself last night. You answered for a lot of people." As they spoke, there was a knock at Anna's door. When she opened it, Keanu was standing there holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "Thought you could use one," he said. She took it, smiling. "Thank you. For everything." He shrugged lightly, but his eyes were kind. "You did it yourself. We were just here to remind you could." The 3 of them met later that afternoon in the hotel lobby before heading to the airport. Their schedules would pull them in different directions again, but for now, they sat together on a quiet couch, the hum of passing guests filling the background. Sandra leaned back, crossing her legs. "You know what I love about all this?" she said. "The question that was supposed to tear you down ended up building something bigger. And you didn't just survive it. You owned it." Anna looked between them, her chest tightening in the best way. "I think maybe that's what belonging really means. Not just proving you deserve to be somewhere, but knowing it, even when someone tries to take it away." Keanu gave the faintest smile. And knowing you're not standing there alone. They didn't take a photo. They didn't post about it. The moment belonged only to them. 3 people who had stood together when it mattered, and who had left the room stronger than they entered it. As they finally stood to leave, Anna felt something she hadn't felt since the press conference. Not relief, not defiance, but peace. And she carried it with her, knowing it would last long after the noise faded.